Going to call the meeting to order. With the video, I'd like to announce the meeting is being videotaped. Also, that we will at the end of the meeting be going into executive session. So, and as I understand it, there is no public comment this evening. So one thing I'd like to request is a board member to volunteer to be timekeeper for us tonight and keep us on track.
I can do it.
All right, thank you.
Just excuse me, we're not going to reconvene.
Oh, right, and we will, when we go into executive session, we will not be reconvening.
That was good.
Yes. Perfect timing.
Good traffic.
So this evening we'll have three votes. The first will be to approve the minutes. The second will be, after hearing the yearly audit report, to approve that, and we have one vote coming from the Finance Committee. So starting with the approval of minutes. Any comments on the minutes?
I just had a question. I was a little confused, and it might be, I don't know what it is, but, so, under D and E, you had Raul made the motion, but then he was absent. So I was just a little bit confused.
Which page?
Hang on.
Top of two.
Yeah. So on the top of two, under D and E,
Yeah, I'm actually not showing absent on the...
so I was just a little,
Oh, I wonder why.
I don't know.
Does anyone remember?
No.
Of course we all remember. Crazy.
Well, I know for sure I wasn't here.
Just whoever was here, pick one.
Thank you. Thank you for doing that. I don't know why.
Right, because you have Raul present.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, that's probably, I don't know why though. Okay.
I was here in spirit.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Not a problem. See, we do read these, just FYI, in case you're wondering.
The teacher report is blank, and the parent report is blank too. Is that intentional? Looks like I'm not doing my job. I wasn't here, but I gave Roger my notes.
Yeah. So I had promptly lost your notes. So the parent representative one is intentionally blank.
That should be fine.
We'll just blame
You
Roger
can
for it.
recap though from last month. And
Yeah,
size those
exactly.
up.
Yeah.
So if you approve these, then you do it how? Like if this was an oversight or something, I'm not sure.
Well, we would be approved with edits, just like we're editing the board member nominations. So Jess, was there?
You had a report. I was here and I gave
Yeah.
a report, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you'd
You
like.
want me to remember what it was? It was very exciting. Oh, I wasn't prepared for that.
I remember putting it all in, so sometimes in the program, if you don't save it, it can not be.
Disappear.
And so I may not have noticed that, so I'll go in.
Okay.
Because I don't have it with me here, I've had it.
Okay.
Okay.
So we can approve with that?
We can approve with edits.
Okay.
In that case, I think Jess, if you could just work with Sarah to confirm.
Yep.
The teacher representative portion of the minutes.
Yep. Thank you.
Other comments? Would entertain a motion to approve the meeting minutes with edits.
I move that we approve the meeting minutes.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Abstain.
With the evidence.
Okay, we'll just as for the record, we have not yet received official DESE approval for our new board members, so they will be non-voting board. They are not official board members for voting purposes. So, All right, I'd like to invite our auditor up to run us through the,
Dave Kelleher from AANF, can you say it like that?
Yes.
Tongue twister that it is when you say it the other way.
Yeah, listen, we'll go with the MCPSA, that's a lot easier to handle, so. So thank you, everybody, tonight. Won't take too much of your time here. We do have a summary, I think the document we're going to stay with mostly tonight is a summary, should be the front of everybody's packet, heading on to this key financial ratios. But I'll talk a little bit just about the audit process first. DESE, as they want to have the final audit submitted November 1st, so we did a lot of the audit work over the last month with the help of Leanna and her team. And again, I think we're happy to report that the audit reports are clean, unmodified opinions as they have been in the past. There's no findings as we look at DESE compliance. And again, we did have the opportunity to meet with Leanna and Ellen a couple of weeks back at this point, and the Finance Committee last week to go through the detail of this. So we'll definitely do a more summarized presentation for the board group here tonight. So we can look at the key financial ratios. So I think it's hopefully a good size fold-out page at the top here. And really what we have here in the 2018 and 2019 data is just the results of AMSA in those two left columns. And what we end up doing each year to try to give the schools we work with the basis of comparison is they're unnamed schools, but school A through D. And what we'll say about those schools is that they're clients of AAF, they're mass charter schools, and we try as best we can to look at things like enrollment and just give you some comparables in the charter school space. And then that far right-hand column on this sheet is the average of all the schools and the families that we work with. That data's got a little bit of a lag to it with the 2018 final audit averages of our client base included in there. The other thing I wanted to make sure I mentioned about just the AMSA results for this year as we go through the numbers is we did have no audit adjustments as part of the process. So the data that the Finance Committee management are getting, there were no changes to that as part of the audit process. So that is good news. And I don't get to say that all the time. So thank you to Liana and everybody keeping the finances in line here. So just at the top of the key financial ratios, I'll start looking at the left of the page here. And just really this first box on the upper left gives you a little bit of almost a bio on each of these schools. So, remembering AMSA in its first academic year of 2005, I think as we look at things like when we get to the second page and look at months in reserve, so to speak, it's good to remember that all of the other schools that we have here with similar size enrollments, with the exception of School B, they had a few more years of academic years to achieve reserves. So they go back to the 1990s, a couple 1995s, 96, 98. So when we get to those months in reserves, I just want to factor that in at the end. I'm just really looking at going down a box here on your current ratio. Again, looking at, here the higher the better as you look at the comparisons here. So AMSA at 5.13, that really says that for every dollar of current obligations AMSA has, you have $5 of liquid assets to pay that off. And the bulk of that really is in cash. So again, that's a very strong liquid position. And as you can see, looking at these other schools and even the average in the far right-hand column, all of these, again, in School B, we'll see a few things about them that they're really in a construction phase effectively here as they are in the process of really getting a facility situation settled. So things like their current ratio, their debt to equity, it's a little bit of an odd snapshot in time for them that they do have a substantial amount of debt at this current point. So don't want anybody to be alarmed and things like that. So. Just the debt to equity next on AMSA, and unlike the current ratio, the lower the better here. So the 0.13 that you see here for AMSA is saying really for every dollar of equity that AMSA has, you only have about 13 cents of liability. So in fiscal 18, when the building was purchased here, we were lucky enough to have the reserves to purchase that without taking on debt. So here, a good low ratio to show. And again, across these other 4 schools, the AMSA is the lowest, significantly below our average client base for 2018 as well. So knowing you're still working on the facility situation, but you're in a good position to go forward with that. Just the next item down, the operating revenue mix. And again, AMSA both of these years, around low 90% from pupil tuition, and again, if you add in the grants government, you're about 92, 93% government supported. So again, we're really pretty close to schools A and B here, on that higher end of tuition. And again, this does vary a lot with the different sending districts that the charter schools have here, that some that we work with have a lot more government funding, entitlement funding from DESE around, whether it's Title I's, special ed funding, things like that, that AMSA really doesn't have at this current time. So you are a little higher percentage than I'd say our average group, but that's not really anything of an alarm to have. I did want to just mention the interest and other this year, at $261,000 for AMSA for 2019. That includes a full year of rental income, SMOC being, that includes both SMOC and I think some cell phone tower rental income there. So that in total is about $235,000 leading to that increased income, since there was only 1 quarter last year. On the operating expense side, again, not too many major changes here. Just the personnel and related costs, your almost 70% of your operating budget is spent there. And again, looking across some of the other schools, you do see 75-80% in a couple of places. Our whole client base for last year was about 66%. So again, the other area that AMSA does have maybe a higher percentage than some of these other schools, for the most part, I think with the exception of School C, is just in the student costs. So again, a lot of those student costs in the mix here. You do run a lot of athletic programs, so that's where a lot of those program expenses are rolling into those student costs. So that's really the AMSA experience you have here, leading to a little different mix than some other schools.
So those are athletic expenses that we're subsidizing?
So those are, there is program revenue. So in that box before that, the program service fees is the revenue piece.
Right.
And of that student cost piece, about 1.2 million of that is program expenses. So not all of it's athletic, but does that help answer that question?
I think so.
Okay. I was going to say, I didn't
So
want
the cost is the cost of the program, whether or not it's subsidized, and then the revenue is the part that is not subsidized.
Right. So it's the difference. I would have to, I do a little subtraction, right?
Yeah, so I'd say about maybe $400,000 difference. I live with that, so. I mean, just the very last item here, on the very thin line here, but changes in unrestricted net position. This is a fancy way of saying in the government accounting world, this is AMSA surplus for the year, so there's $506,000. Again, still a very solid surplus there. And that runs about 3% of your overall budget size. So that's not, when we look at this, and again, you can see other schools here, you have different levels of surplus. And one of the particular reasons that went down, besides some, I think, just planned salary changes and things like that in fiscal 19, is with the purchase of the building, you do have a full year of depreciation on the property this year. So that was an additional $130,000 in expense that wasn't in fiscal 18. So that's, if you just look at the prior year surplus and you see a little bit of a drop there, that's part of the reason why. And again, you can see a whole mix with other schools that we work here, but looking out to the far right, if you see a $566,000 surplus on about $11 million of operating revenue in our average client base for last year, AMSA's pretty close on that front there. So that's over 28 schools. Any questions here on the first page? In the second page at the top, gives you a little bit of a per-student mix. And again, schools A through D, I didn't mention it at the top, but they are really all in different geographic areas of the state. So I think we'll be able to see as we look at things like tuition per student. I will say that school D is in the Metro Boston area. So when you look at AMSA at about 14,000 of tuition per student, school D here at almost 18,000, you're going to have a big difference in some of the ways that they could spend money compared to AMSA. So they are a Metro Boston school. But again, I think with these other schools and again, a few different geographic regions here, at least probably most comparable to school A on the per student tuition, in the mid $14,000 range there. But I think a good point that, and it might have been Roger who brought it up last week, the second to last line down in this first box here, your occupancy cost per square foot, that $24 and $25, that's a fully loaded cost, including what's paid for the athletic facilities for 4 kicks. So we just added a quick footnote after that finance committee meeting to say apples to apples for a school that may own their facility, not have to pay rent, you're more $20 to $21 a square foot for occupancy costs. So again, that looking across here, school A and D at $19 and $21 a square foot, they're really right in the same space. Our average client base in total is about $17 a square foot. So that, again, and that's fully loaded occupancy costs that for schools that lease, that would have all your rent, repairs and maintenance, and the utilities. And for schools that own, that would include the interest expense. So that's at least the categorization of occupancy costs there. And overall, just the last box there, the personnel cost, the number of employees, at about $75,000. This does include payroll taxes, fringe benefits, just really the fully loaded cost here of personnel for AMSA. So that does vary a lot by all the different sending districts here, and that's probably one of the tougher numbers to see a trend on looking at individual schools, because you've got a low of about $60,000 here and a high of 84. So it's you're still in the range in our whole client base, which, I mean, you've got some real rural charter schools and some urban ones, blended rate of $63,000. The last box here, which will bring us down to probably the last 2 lines in the 2019 column for AMSA, your unrestricted operating net position, and forgive me for hating the government accounting terms, but let's call that AMSA's working capital. That's your equity not tied up in facilities. So that $5.4 million number, if you equate that to the monthly cash flow run rate that AMSA has at about $1.2 million, you have about 4.5 months of reserves and working capital. So I think in my early years working with the school here, it was, we'll call it the archaic days of quarterly tuition payments, that 3 months used to be really the bare minimum that you needed there. You're at least being paid monthly at this point, so we still look for organizations, both schools and other organizations, to have 3 to 6 months of working capital. So you're really right in the middle there. And again, as you look at the different schools individually, you're right around a little higher than school A, they're about 4 months. School B, I mentioned them at the start as having a construction project, and again, it really looks with 0.14 months that they're fronting a little bit of that capital project currently, just as a snapshot at the end of their year. And then school C at 3.8 months, again, you're a little above there. And my friend's school D, Metro Boston, good to remember, $18,000 per student, also helps give you about 10 months of working capital reserves. So across our client base, about 5.3 months is, just the whole average there. So you're really right there. And again, with all these schools having more academic years than AMSA, I almost said older, try not to make it about age, but they've had more time to accumulate reserves. So, I mean, I think you're in a very favorable position, also knowing you use some of that working capital to purchase a building asset. Any questions on these first couple of pages?
What makes school D such an outlier. So do they have a lot of cash? Or?
So when I look at that unrestricted operating net position, so first, they're a very early school, 1996, so had over 20 years to generate reserves. And then honestly, when I look at that per pupil tuition that they have, I think that over 20 plus years has helped them generate solid reserves. Actually, 10 months is more than solid. I think I might have one client who has that rate of solid.
Do the personnel costs, that includes like all administration and teachers and staff, right? Is there a way to compare like across schools how that breaks down between teachers and admin and staff?
So I know through our audits, we don't have that data just because you'd have to know almost the staffing mix in the school. I'm just trying to think if anything on the end of year report delves into that level of detail on staffing. Leon, I'm trying to think of those end of year report schedules.
Maybe, we could look at it just.
That's just curious.
Yeah, I see your question, that it does blend into, I can even say that blending into, you're using teacher assistants, what types of programs are you running? There can be a lot of factors.
Be good to know though. Just to figure
Any
out.
other questions on these first couple of pages?
It's not really numbers now.
On the third page, we'll be very quick for you. This is a draft view of DESE's dashboard, as we call it, that they really accumulate all the audit data and plug it into their database, and I think they usually have a 5-year trend here. So for everybody here, I'm not going to bore you by walking through all these calculations, but I think this is a stoplight that with DESE, they're high risk, they would have you being red here, moderate risk would be yellow, and you can guess that green is low risk. So my running joke is green means go, and we should all move on.
I'm sorry, what does it look like?
There is a third page in those ratios.
It's in that same.
Oh, okay, okay. Thank you, son. Oh, look at all the green.
Yeah.
Green is good.
Green is good.
Good job.
That'll be brief that we do. And then the very last page, and this is I'll call this a required calculation from DESE, that I think it might have been around 2012, I think they attached this calculation, and it basically allows charter schools, and this shows up in the total surplus section down in lines 13 through 15, it allows you to carry over 25% of your actual tuition for the current year and 20% of your next year's tuition before you have to send money back to sending districts. So in this case, this excess surplus on line 17 says that you're really not close to your allowable surplus, so that's good news as well. So I think we did talk, and it probably dates back to fiscal 17. There were some years that before you bought the facility, you were getting closer to that allowable surplus, but purchasing a facility does make a big difference in that. So really, those were the number highlights I was going to touch base on with the board for tonight, and again, it was a good audit process and good results. Anyone have any questions?
I'd like to thank Leah and her team again, and Ellen and team, because honestly, they do good work all year long, which leads to this point where they have a clean audit, and it takes a lot of diligence and a lot of effort, and a lot of crunch time at the end to make sure that all the details and schedules are prepared, so thank you to Leanna, of course. And we get to vote, Roger?
Yes.
Am I allowed to ask, or? All right.
You may do the honors.
We'd like to vote to accept the audit report so that we can finalize it. Does anybody?
Second.
Can I first, do I?
Yeah, so Kristen and Liz,
Yep.
all in favor? All opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Dave.
Great,
Great, thank you.
thank you.
Thanks again.
With 10 minutes to spare.
It's a big plus work day.
I like to keep people moving when I can.
Green boxes and 10 minutes extra?
Yeah.
Bam, that's the best audit ever.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you again.
Dave.
All right. Last vote topic is, here we go,
Finance again.
finance. So you want to tee it up?
Sure, so you won't hear much from us after this, I guess. So we have been evaluating the investment policy for the school with respect to the cash that we have on hand. And we want to maximize the earnings that we're getting from that cash to the best of our ability while still staying as liquid as possible. So we're asking the board to approve the Finance Committee to open two new bank accounts, which would be up to two new bank accounts, which would be investment vehicles for us to put some of our cash surplus into greater interest-bearing accounts. Very secure, very safe, but we'd like to have the opportunity to do that as well as two accounts and up to two banks so that we can also begin to build additional relationships with other financial institutions.
In particular, all of this would be insured with FDIC or equivalent.
All very, very
There's,
safe,
you know,
very highly liquid. It's honestly, it's marginally better interest, but it's still better interest. And the relationship building is also very important to the school as well as we consider ultimately, buying a building and needing a funding source. That's part of the reason why we want to do this.
Is it like a money market or?
Yes, primarily a money market.
So it's not like a CD that you can't get to a
No,
certain time?
it's very highly liquid. And we're still evaluating options, so we haven't locked it down, but most of the options will allow taking funds out at any time up to a certain number of times per year. Similar to what we have today in our holding accounts.
And I'm assuming there wouldn't be an issue of taking all the money out if we need to.
Correct. Yep, nope, not locked in at anything, all very highly liquid. And we're creating an investment policy as well that would stipulate a lot of these items so that they would all be in writing. And we'll bring that.
Are you looking at local community investments? Is it local community banks too, or is it, you're looking at all the different options?
We're looking at multiple options, generally smaller than the large national banks. So somewhat regional, but not super regional. Our current bank is very regional, but they are very small. They have indicated, correct me if I'm wrong too, right, that they're not large enough to fund any kind of a loan that we would be interested in doing. And so we need to go up one level as well, and that also provides more investment power from those institutions as well. So can I have a motion to accept the Finance Committee's request?
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
so was Maura and Liz? Any other discussion?
Questions? No?
Seeing no discussion, all in favor? All opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Look forward to hearing the results and seeing the investment policy in a future meeting. Next up, Ellen.
It's nice to see everyone tonight. We have a full, yeah, it's working?
Yeah.
Okay, we've got a full report tonight, so we'll move right along. If you have any questions, wave me down. There's quite a bit of data that we've included tonight. And of course, we'll start out with some razzle-dazzle time and show you just a little bit of the community service some of our students have been working on. Then we're going to talk about enrollment and attrition update, and that will be for the entire 2018-2019 year. And we're going to talk about MCAS summary data. You have some data in your packets that weren't going to fit on slides. Too much detail anyway. You can take a look at your leisure, and I'm happy to go through any of it with you at any time. And then we're going to talk about the 2019 DESE accountability classification. It's the new system put in last year, and we'll talk about that. So a little razzle-dazzle. All right, so we had Dr. Stephanie Maddox from Harvard University come, and she's been here, I believe, once before. She went to Dr. Doyle. Dr. Doyle actually found her, and students from AP Psychology, Bio, and Anatomy and Physiology got to spend some time looking at brains. They've got little different brains from different animals. I'm not really sure, but what I love most about this is that if you just take a look at the faces of our students, right? They are, look at his eyes, and you can see it so clearly on Facebook. This is wonder and amazement and awe that these students are experiencing. Look at the smile on her face. It's one of our younger students from biology. These kids are absolutely amazed, and this is the kind of educational opportunities that our teachers bring to our students every day. This is why they love to learn. So just so thrilled with this. I opened this up on Facebook, and my heart just leaps through the ceiling just looking at these kids' faces.
It's worth noting, if I might interrupt, that
Yes,
Dr.
please.
Doyle was on paternity leave when this happened, and so he gave up his own personal time with his family to make sure that he was making those connections happen for his kids who came in from that time, so.
He sure did, and Dr. Doyle is back now after
He is, yeah.
his new little one has come into the world. I also wasn't sure if folks were aware that we have a fencing club here at AMSA, and this is run after school, and it's done by Christy Jagowski. And, I, once again, looked at these photos, and what I see here is, the things that fencing teaches our students. There's balance and agility and all kinds of skills and things like that. But I also see, if you take a look up here, this is one of our older students, and she's mentoring, she's teaching, she's leading the younger students in this fencing exercise. And then look at these two shaking hands when they were done, right? Great sportsmanship. And just so proud of these kids. And when you see these pictures, you can see all that they're learning. And this is held on Friday afternoons in the lower school cafeteria. Thank you, Christy. All right, so this was Mix It Up Day, hosted by, we have 8th grade mentors that mentor our younger students. This is the Bullying Prevention Week. We also had Unity Day. You may have seen that advertised when our students wore orange oh, Mike, I don't think I can.
Oh, you want to play?
Yeah, thank you. If you just set that. Just wanted to show you, this was a Mix It Up Day that they ate with different students.
Did you get one? Just grab one and you're going to go to the... What TV show have you? Would you want the power to read people's minds? Why or why not? No. What's your favorite sports team? You know how you're going in a circle. What's your favorite sports team?
And I loved that because, first of all, it was organized by our 8th grade mentors, but also they had organized it with the school counselors. The school counselors had been running these activities all week long with the lower school students, and they were so open to the idea. You didn't see anyone say, "Oh, I don't want to do this. I want to sit with my friends." They all included each other. I thought it was a wonderful thing for the kids to do. Oh, did my little thing die? Okay.
It might have been just because once you play the video.
It didn't go. Okay, this is a quick community service project that was done by Leaders of Tomorrow. I just wanted to show you this. One of the things you may know, this is where we were on Saturday. Right, so the kids actually go down here once a month, and Mark Vidal takes them down. The food is donated from Leaders of Tomorrow. The kids come and they prepare it, they set the tables, and they serve. wonderful opportunity for our kids. Look how happy they look. And that's how we feel when we help take care of others. Okay.
Oh, sorry, can I add one more?
Yes.
Basil? So just so everybody knows, the AMSA golf team is playing in the States on Monday, so I just wanted to put that out there. And the Metro West Daily News is coming over to interview them and take pictures tomorrow, so I'll send out the link once it comes out.
Thank you, Liz. And also, our girls volleyball team is also playing very well this year. I heard they were 15-0 so far.
17-1.
17-1? Okay, there you go. I'm a little outdated. So they're doing a great job, too. Now we're going to look at enrollment and attrition update. This is for the entire years. Debated back and forth how to actually break this up. I did give a mid-year report last February or so. Decided to give you the full view so you didn't have to think about what it looked like before. We start with student enrollment. When Anders and I first came into our positions, we were well over 990 actually during a mid-year point. So these numbers are off our student information system, but you can see in 2017-18 we had about 984 students. We actually had more than that at one point. We had some withdrawals. And then 2018-19 we were told by the Department of Education very clearly many times to get our enrollment numbers down and under control. And we were able to bring it down to 973 last year. Start of the school year and for our October 1st SIMS we were at the 966. So yay! That's an exciting thing. It was something we've been fighting with for years, and we had to make some really drastic changes in order to make that happen. Sarah Snow's been so instrumental in helping us get that under control, so thank you, Sarah. But we're very, very excited about that, and to go into our charter renewal on November 1st with our... yes?
Maybe I should know the answer to this. What was DESE's target?
Our charter's 966.
Yes.
So we are there. We are there. That's why we have fireworks.
What is the SIMS? What is that?
The SIMS report is all the numbers that we send into a couple times a year. October 1st and March 1st, and that's what they base our tuition on. Okay. All right, and this is just some visuals so that you can see how many students we have in each grade. You can see that 9th grade class is our largest class, and we have projections. You've seen them. We can show you the updated numbers at some point if you're interested to. We will be adding some students into 7th grade when this current 6th grade class goes into 7th. But we're waiting for the larger classes to graduate on the other end. The goal is to have about 140 in 6th, 7th, and 8th. And we can maintain that, and then the numbers will be a little lower in 10th, 11th, and 12th. Once we really are able to even all of that out, we expect that to take a couple more years. All right, so just by towns, just kind of interesting information. We have 546 Marlboro students, 131 Hudson, 73 Clinton, 54 Maynard, and then other, 162. We still have quite a few different towns that we have commuting here to AMSA. And most of those, their siblings, except...
I was going to say, is every one of the others a sibling?
Not really, because last year we had to take in some 9th grade students, and we went through all the wait list for all the siblings in all the 4 core town. The same thing has happened this year. We've taken in some students from other towns recently, actually in the last couple of weeks, 9th graders, and it's because we've gone through all the other wait list. It is interesting. I think, 9th grade, and you start calling people in September, October, November, and they're very hesitant to leave their school year. They've already started. Sometimes people from outside town, Shrewsbury in particular, have been waiting for a long time to get an opportunity, so they're more willing to jump in October.
I will say from a teacher's perspective, a lot of teachers were very uneasy when we opened up. We used to only take new students at the lower grades, and so when we found out we had to start taking 9th graders, a lot of teachers were freaking out because they're gonna be so behind on the curriculum. But the kids that come at 9th grade, I have been so impressed with every kid who has come as a new 9th graders. Those kids, they want to be here, they are dedicated, they are working hard. Some of the nicest kids ever.
Oh, that's fantastic news. And we've actually taken in a few kids from Worcester this year, which is exciting. I love taking some students in from that side of town too. And not one of our core towns, but excited to have them. Okay, this is attrition from 2018. So you've got your classes. You can see 2019, that was last year's graduating class, so those are 12th and 11th, and it goes up that way. And then across the top, the first column after the class is the total of how many students we lost, and then it's broken down by, they returned to their sending district, they moved, in-state, out-of-state, they went to a private school. You can see the class of 2023, we had 5 students go to private schools. Those students were actually recruited, for the most part, for athletics, which is interesting. We had more of that happening this year than we've had in the past, but we've had some very talented athletes. And to ask the bet, you can see in the class of 2021, that's the year that they potentially can go over to Mass Academy. And we lost 6 students to Mass Academy this year. But the biggest one is, so that's 12, 11, 10, 9. The 8th grade, that's definitely a transition year. We lost 17, and you can see, where they moved back to. But that is a year where some students, they want to move out of their home districts for junior high, middle school, and then back. Okay, so this is our wait list. This is who is sitting on a wait list right now. So across the top, you've got your grades, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then your siblings, core towns, non-core towns. So just you can see on the 9th grade list on the far side, we've depleted the siblings, we've depleted the core towns, and so we still have 117 non-core town applications sitting there. And that is where Linda is drawing from now. We have 623 students on the wait list currently in those grades.
So, can I ask a question? So,
Sure.
I know we're at the 966, so you have to lose one to take one.
Right.
But how do you determine which grade to start? Do we always start with 6? Like, what's the...
We would like to. So what actually has happened to us this year, and this was a scheduling mistake, honestly, is that we have maxed out with the number of students that we can bring into 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. And that was, we had new schedules working, and we all worked hard to make it balance correctly. But there was a couple blocks during the day where there just weren't enough classes offered during that particular block, which put a stop on it. So if you have, X number of, you have an English class, and you have art class, and a PE class, and a history or English, but you only offer 4 of them, and a max of 25 in a class, but you've got 106 students, it can be very, very tricky. And what happened to us due to some little tweaks in the schedule is that the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade it's frozen. We just can't bring in one more student. I would love to bring in more 6th graders. It's frozen. And that's why, as just as saying, we've brought in more 9th graders this year. But if a 6th grader leaves, we have to fill that 6th grade seat. But we can't add more than 105 that we have right now. I just don't have enough seats in 4 of the classes. And a lot of that is driven by our math levels. So the students come in, they get an assessment, and it determines their math level. Once that math level is in there, then you're working around that one math class for all the other classes to fit in.
This is an annual problem.
It's an annual.
This is not a forever problem.
No, this is an annual.
Next year, a schedule can be figured out. You could bring in more 7th graders next year because
Yes.
you have it. So.
Exactly. We're going to be much more mindful of watching where those little stop places are going to be, and making sure that we have enough places and flexibility in the schedule to schedule in there. But that's what happened to us this year. So the only place right now that we have enough flexibility in the schedule, enough seats to offer, is 9th grade. Once again, the state regs say, if someone leaves 6th or 7th grade, we have to fill that seat in 6th or 7th. But otherwise, we can fill into 9th for empty seats.
Listen, isn't the same thing true for 8th and 9th? If an 8th grader leaves, we have to
Yes,
fill an 8th grade
absolutely.
slot. 9th grade leaves, you have to fill a 9th grade slot. But if someone from 10, 11, and 12 leaves the school, you have that's where you have the flexibility to
Bring it in
fill-
somewhere.
To fill where you wish.
And thank you. And the only place right now we can fill is 9th grade, that we have seats and flexibility there.
But to some degree, I mean, 9th was significantly the largest class.
Yes.
At some point, there's no more 9th graders that we want to bring. Are we forced to bring another 9th
Yes.
grader in?
We have to have at least 966 students here, or you're going to be very upset with me when we don't have the tuition money.
Well, I understand that, but
Yeah.
I'm just wondering what the bubble would do to future scheduling years as well, and what risk that would pose.
It's an issue, and we've had conversations with that. We are definitely concerned about a wave, but we have to have 966 students in the school. And
So the plan for next year would be to have some more flexibility at the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade
absolutely,
levels.
absolutely. I really, in my mind, I was hoping to go up to at least 110, maybe even 112 in 6th grade, and unfortunately just didn't end up having the flexibility. And we'll be much more mindful of that next year.
As attrition happens during the year, like if a kid moves away in March, do we have to fill that seat?
No, we don't. It's up till February 15th, and you have to fill to February 15th. After that, we don't have to fill. So if a student leaves in March, then Linda can open up that seat for the next year.
Next year, okay. I knew there was a cutoff, I didn't remember where it was.
Yep, that's it. All right, now we're going to talk a little bit about MCAS. Oh, Roger?
One more question. I don't know if you have the data now. If you go back one slide, please. How does this compare? You know, this is the first time I've seen it broken out in this way, but maybe starting next year, if we can compare and start seeing trends to see.
Sure. Right.
Like this breakout.
We could, I'm sure Linda has that from last year, because Linda's been with us 2 years now, so she would have something similar, if you're interested. But we can certainly break it out. This, I agree. This was, I think, the way she broke this out in this particular way is something new. But she has all this information. It was just the way that she put it in the report.
All right, thank you.
Sure. All right, so now we're going to talk about MCAS because it's so interesting. But our kids are amazing, and they did a fantastic job. And so I'm going to try to break this tons of data here, as Liz knows, because the Ed Committee was looking at this. It can be overwhelming and confusing, so I tried to limit it to what maybe is most important in the moment. So when we look at this, these students now are currently 11th graders. So they took this the English, math, and science test in the spring. Now, although it says grade 10 science there's a little notation on the DESE information, which I believe is right actually down here, that it's for any, it's the way that they reported out any test that all students took in 9th and 10th grade, they reported it out like that. But the important information here is that our 10th graders, the English language arts, that 93% of our students were meeting or exceeding expectations. The state is 61%. So our students were 32% higher in hitting meeting and exceeding expectations in English language arts. And mathematics, 97% of our students earned a meeting or exceeding, and the state is 59%. I do want to point out that this is not the old legacy MCAS. This is the new MCAS, next generation, not new generation, next generation. And and this is the first year that they've done the 10th grade MCAS on the computer. And so then our students take the biology test in 9th grade, and 96% of our students were proficient or higher. That was the old test, and which is why it's called proficient higher, which is a little separate, different from the meeting and exceeding. And the state earned, the students on average, 74% of them were proficient or higher. So our students did a fantastic job on the MCAS. Very, very proud of the work that they did, and their teachers, for sure. If you look down the one below there, where it says class of 2021, this is the 8th grade MCAS scores for these 10th grade students. And you can see can you call this growth? I'm not really sure. The test is completely different. But their English scores, so 87% of them were meeting and exceeding back when they were 8th graders. Now 93% are. The state was 49. Once again, this was a new test back then when they took it. There's been changes to it since they've, gone from 8th, 9th to 10th grade. And then the mathematics was 74% of our students were meeting or exceeding in 9th grade. Now they're 97%. I mean, huge, huge jumps here. It was 48% in the state and 59% in the state for this year. So they've, I don't know if a mathematician would call this something that, or even the state would call this something that they say it's a little bit apples and oranges because the test has changed, and yet our kids have done really, really, really well.
We described it as comparing Granny Smiths to Max.
Granny Smiths to Max. That's right, I do like both.
Still apples, but.
Still apples,
a little
but
different.
still apples a little different. All right, so the Mass Charter Public School Association, I've become very involved with them this year. Very, very happy to be back with the Mass Charter School Association. And they actually ran quite a bit of data for us that I got a week or so ago. And once again, we are the #1 charter school in the state, according to our MCAS results. And there were no other charter schools that scored as high as we did in any of the categories. And so, but then they also sent us reports of the rankings in all of Massachusetts, so all public schools in Massachusetts. And AMSA was #2. Our math scores were #2 in the state of Massachusetts. Our English scores were #3 in the state of Massachusetts. And now the 9th grade science, we were #12. And yet, if you took out all the ties, like 111, 22, 333, we actually were #5. And so, once again, I think we can be very, very proud of our students and the hard work and the growth that they've had here at AMSA, and to the commitment of our teachers and all that they do for our kids every single day.
Is #1 BLS? Is #1 BLS?
You know, #1 was, for the math, was actually Harvard Broomfield.
Oh.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Broomfield School?
Broomfield School, yeah. If you, I actually had like the top 5 on each one, but it was too much on there. But if you're interested, I've got them. We're gonna paper the walls of the office with it. It's beautiful stuff. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about student growth percentile, because it's a conversation we have every year. I decided to really kind of put the definition down here. There is a 24-page document that the Department of Education has, that if you would like to read all about what student growth percentile is, I can share the link with you. But basically it's this. A student growth percentile, or an SGP, measures how much a student's performance has improved from one year to the next relative to his or her academic peers. So it's not their growth from one year to the next. It's their growth compared to their academic peers across the whole state, not even just across AMSA. And their academic peers are other students statewide with similar MCAS scores from prior years. It's very interesting the way that they put that together.
Because if one goes up, somebody else has to go down, because it's in comparison with each other.
No.
No?
No. Roger, do you have any other further thoughts on answering Jess's question?
Well, it's sort of like, I don't know, I would maybe use baseball teams or baseball teams in different divisions, or stock market, where you're trying to measure, if I got it right, you're trying to measure, student 1 goes from 60 to 70 to 80, and student 2 went from 60, 70 to 100. So student 2 had better growth because from the second year to the third year, they scored better relative to a peer student.
Okay.
Right, but the prior year, their scores were basically the same. And then they take the model, then uses the answer to determine whether the student has grown faster, slower, at a similar rate as their peer across the state. So, do you know how many times I read this to myself over the last 2 weeks? Well, and it's getting just that, the terminology and the rhythm of it. Okay, so now they are also talking about, and I'm going to show you some nice data points in a minute, but they also talk about, in the next slide, I'm going to show you the median SPG, and just so that we're all on the same page, median means the midpoint. So they take all of our students, create an SGP, and then they take the median of that, and the midpoint of the student growth percentile in the school. And then half of the students had growth percentiles above the median, and half had it below the median, okay?
That's the definition of it.
That's the whole definition of median, right? Just make sure we're on the same
Half of
boat.
Americans are earning less than the median salary.
That's right, Jess.
How is it outrage?
With economics here. All right, so I have to say that this is the first time I've created little arrows, and I was quite proud of myself on this. I'm just learning in all kinds of different ways. But, so this here is, this is our English, okay? So AMSA is way up there, Now, what they're saying is that 93% met or exceeded our expectations on our ELA exam, sorry about that. So our median SGP is 54.5. Now, we like our number to be high, we all know that. We would love this if our growth was out here a little bit more, but it's still up a little above half. All right, and then on this one, here's math.
Oh, look at us.
Look at us, way over there.
Killing it over there.
Killing it, yeah. All right, so 97% of our students meet or exceed the expectations. The mean SGP is 81, and we are a real outlier there. So tremendous growth in our math students. Thank you to our math department, our math teachers, Luba Schmidt in particular, for all the work she does with our curriculum, and the teachers who are on the ground every single day helping our students meet their and exceed their math expectations in the state. So,
Is the size of the bubble correlate to the number of students that go to that school?
yes, it does. Yes, it does. Thank you very much. It does.
I look at a lot of...
Any questions on this one?
Just an, I guess, question for the committee, because this is something that we spent quite a bit of time talking about at the Education Committee, but given that our test scores are so high, we were wondering if this measure is maybe even more important to what we're looking at than the actual test scores, because the test scores are so, I mean,
So close.
Yes.
Yep.
So there's so little change that we see in the MCAS scores year over year, just because they've just, historically, they've been so high. But this was what we really focused in on and talked about, and we thought that this might even be more significant in terms of looking at it year over year.
Yeah, we definitely can look at this year over year, and keeping in mind that every year there's a whole group, a different batch of students that are taking the test, right? With different strengths and weaknesses, but we certainly, I think we can say that we aced it this year.
And this is published by DESE.
Yeah, it's right on the DESE website.
So this is not us publishing the numbers?
No.
This is them publishing right
No, I didn't make that bubble. That I can assure you.
She made the arrows, and that's...
I did the arrows, I was pretty proud of, and I put the little red words in the side there, you know? My technology, I know, see, Jess, there you go.
And she started the thing herself tonight.
I did. Yeah. I'm growing leaps and bounds. All right, there we go. Okay, so now we're getting into, this is the DESE accountability classification. This is the second year. Sarah and I went to a training that was run by the Department of Education for a whole day in the spring to learn about this new accountability classification system that we have. It is really in the trial stages, and they're really trying to figure out how to make this work or not. This is actually connected to this second piece of paper that you have here. That's probably way too much. There's points involved, and they've really made this very, very complicated.
Does anybody need reading glasses?
Yeah, reading glasses, exactly. This is all on the website, but I just want you to know, one of the important parts is that this is brand new. It's only the second year. They're still calibrating this. And that in 2017-18, which was the first year, and they were very honest when we went to the training, that they're really not sure where they're putting their weights and if it's really in the right place or not. But last year, we were partially meets, and that was the category, the classification we found ourselves in. It was a little disappointing. There was a lot of factors built in there. One was that they combine our middle school and high school. They don't treat us like two separate schools. But in a district school like Marlboro, they would count Marlboro High School and then the middle school separately, and they each would get their own classification. They averaged ours together, and there's a few other factors too, but that's the one that made me kind of
Not fair.
feel concerned. And we missed the meeting and exceeding by 1 point last year, so disappointing. But that means we had room to grow, and we did. And so this is just a small portion. It is very complicated, the point system that they've created. But well, there's a few things that's really interesting about this. First of all, right now for this year, so our classification is meeting and exceeding targets. So congratulations to all our kids and teachers. And Our score this year was 79, and we had to get up over 75. Keeping in mind that these 70s, that doesn't mean a C. That's just the percentages that they have. But what's really interesting, okay, so forget that 79, forget I said that. All right, our score, now this is an annual criterion reference target percentage, and they weight this. They took the 69% that we had in this category last year, and for this year they weighted it 40%. This year we earned 86%, and they only gave us a 60% weighting for our current scores. They averaged the two of them together with the weight, and now we have a 2-year score of 79%, which gives us the meeting or exceeding targets. If
Good
you,
thing we're the Advanced Math and Science Academy.
right,
Hopefully the kids can.
right.
Yeah, exactly. So might want to bring them to the next meeting.
And as you can see, this is literally 3 inches of this page here. But the good news, the takeaway is our students did a fantastic job. Our teachers are amazing. We love them all. We are meeting or exceeds targets. We are the #1 charter school in the state. We're #2 in mathematics. We're #3 in English. And I think we're rocking it. And go Eagles. Anyone have any questions or anything? I'd be happy to talk to you another time too if you have anything that comes to mind.
Thank you all. Great report. Teacher, Jess,
Hi.
you have a report this month.
I do have a report this month. So, I mean, not that it's gonna matter, we're just not gonna put it down. You know, before meetings comes up, like the parent rep, I try and reach out to teachers. I have a Google form set up that's actually always live, although I send out a little reminder that it's open before a meeting. I can collect, teachers can report on that anonymously, so if there's something that they're not feeling comfortable with, that's an anonymous way for them to do it. Of course, I also try and meet with a lot of teachers in person, face-to-face. They have my email and my text. So some of the feedback that I get is, if it comes through the anonymous form, sometimes it's a little difficult for me to put it into context, but I still think it's important that teachers sort of have that avenue for me to come to. So just always kind of keep in mind that it's. So one of the things that I wanted to kind of report on is that October was a trying month to be a teacher at AMSA because the schedule had about 1 billion disruptions in it. And I know that for a lot of people in the AMSA community, these disruptions, what teachers see as disruptions, are what students see as fun. And so we recognize that, and I think that teachers know that the rhythm of the academic year, it needs to be broken up. It can't be just always Monday through Friday, same old, same old. So these things that come along and break up the monotony of the week, those are valuable things. When they start piling up and they're taking away from class time, there's always sort of a little bit of that, but October was there was a lot of frustrations from teachers. So I'm gonna read you a list of things that disrupted classroom time scheduling. There was the DESE trip, which actually happened at the end of September, but the sophomores went to that. There was a national math exam, the MAML, that kids got pulled out of class for. There's homecoming week, which some of it is outside of school, some of it is just, you know, kids showing up in costumes and masks, so it's just a little bit distracting. But some of it is also taking away time from class time. For instance, a lot of teachers of seniors, the seniors do like a stomping, shouting madness thing at lunch, and they're not coming to class for, I'm sorry, flash dance. The term flash dance implies more talent than there probably is during that activity, but
Being recorded.
it's a lot of loud. So the homecoming week happens. There's also things like kids getting dismissed from
it's a distraction. There was the half day, the PD half day, and on a half day, when you only meet half your classes, so for instance, I teach economics 3 different periods. So if I'm only gonna see one of them and I'm not gonna see the other 2 because they're in the afternoon, that throws my rhythm off, so I don't often, like, I can't really schedule a test or a quiz for that day because I'm only gonna see one of them. And there were actually 2 half days in October, one of which was also for the PSATs, which was time for class. We also lost class time for not just taking the PSATs, but having kids fill in the little bubble things for them to register for the PSATs. There was school pictures that kids got taken out of class. There was a senior class picnic or trip or field trip or something. They went to Boston, yeah? They seemed to have a good time.
Yeah, they were supposed to in September, but due to the mosquitoes, they couldn't get pushed off.
So that got pushed, and same with school pictures. It got just pushed to September because of something else. There was BMI or posture screenings by the nurse where kids are being pulled from class. There was a pep rally. The 8th grade had a visit to Assabet. Then we have individual kids out for college visits. The golf team was out a lot. And then there's also Jewish holidays and PSATs and things like that where even if it's not class time out, it's time where teachers are encouraged to either not give homework or not give tests or quizzes. So it's a disruption in your sort of curriculum flow. So, and we also have the site visit coming at on November 1st, which will be more of that. So I think teachers are just kind of feeling like it's just a lot of distractions in October, and I feel like I got like 3 class periods in with some of my classes. And I'm certainly not saying that we should get rid of any of these things. I just sort of, it's difficult to get your rhythm going. And I think one of the things that people also don't think about, especially with field trips or things like that, for instance, the seniors were all out on Tuesday for their trip. And I teach seniors, but I don't teach 100% seniors. But because they're gone, my juniors also lost a day on learning because I'm not gonna run a class with 30% of my class. And like even chorus, like there was no chorus rehearsal because there was less than 50% of the class. So that's a difficult thing. So other grades are losing time on learning because of one thing that's taken out. There's a lot of moving pieces in a curriculum like this where it's really tightly woven, so when you start pulling on the threads, it can get frustrating really quickly. So I met with Ellen about that, and we had some productive conversations about how we can minimize that, so, or at least kind of mitigate some of these factors. Spreading things out. And I think it's valuable to say it publicly, because I know if you, there's no teacher that's like, we should get rid of homecoming, and the kids are like, this is our favorite part, and we recognize that, but I think the aggregate loss on learning there needs to be a recognition that's happening, and it can be frustrating to teachers. It's not our core mission, so that can be frustrating. There's also the other thing I just kind of wanted to mention is teachers have been coming to me actually for a little while on this. I haven't brought it up before because I think that it was something that we were waiting to see if the new school year could kind of we're going to figure it out, and that is the IT. We spent a lot of money on a new server, and teachers are still feeling frustrated. There was some files that were lost over there. There's still a lot of things that teachers are not finding websites that they're trying to get to load properly, or their classrooms are not getting online. So there's some fundamental IT problems that we thought we had solved, that we haven't solved, that still need a little bit of tweaking. I know I talked to Ellen about this as well, and so we're hoping that that's still going to come, but it's now the end of October, and that hasn't happened yet. So when it was happening the first week of September, we were all like, yeah, there's going to be glitches, we got a new system. But those are still there, and it's frustrating. So that's kind of what teachers are griping about. Generally speaking, we're a happy lot, but that's kind of where the gripes are.
Yeah, in fact, I pulled together an update, and I passed it off to Roger, and talked about it with Raul during our pre-meeting. And what happened with they definitely lost files, and they were corrupted with the old server in the spring. And then what happened was people just didn't realize they were corrupted because they weren't opening up their stuff from the fall. And so Erica's working one-on-one to try to recover some of those corrupted files, but they actually were corrupted due to the problems we were having with the old server last year, unfortunately. And there's some other detailed information that she gave to us too, and there's things that they are still working on, and I don't have the paper, because I'm not an IT specialist. I made sure that I got that from Erica. But it's been very difficult. They've worked very, very hard to I think it was a huge mammoth of a project to try to get that done over the summer. I know that Joe took off 2 or 3 days all summer and was working through the weekends. So there's been significant efforts by the IT team, but I think it was a big, big project to bite off. Is there anything on there that stands out to you as far as?
I haven't even had a chance to digest it, so.
I shall pass this down to you, Jess, and I know that the next things that they're doing is that he's rebuilding the following servers on the new hardware: Alertus server, printing server, and Lino's web server. So
You're going to pass it down to me and I'm still not going to know. And I'll pass it on to somebody who maybe will.
but that's the update on the server, and it certainly has been a much bigger challenge than we had hoped. For sure.
Other questions for Jess?
Just a question on the craziness of October. I don't want to assume I understand what scheduling means at AMSA.
Yeah, good,
And
yeah.
and I know it's been a focus area, and every year is going to be different. Is considering these disruptions, because some of them might be unexpected, but some of them might have been planned.
Yeah, some of them are
Is that part of the process?
Yeah, sort of. Some of them are planned as part of the rhythm of the school year. So homecoming almost always happens in October that week, and teachers kind of know that that's going to come with a certain level of craziness, and it's sort of like a little bit of unavoidable, right? We understand that it comes with a little bit of and we understand. It also comes with some nice upside. I mean, to see the kids how excited they get at these things, and how they get into the decorating, and I mean, we love to see the school spirit, and I've been here long enough to remember when we were first trying to launch homecoming week and trying to get kids to have a little bit of school spirit, and that was a little bit of a hard sell in the early days, and so to see that kind of growth is really lovely. So there's some upsides there. I think what teachers would like is to, now that we've sort of have the momentum of that sort of school spirit, is being able to keep it in a controllable way, that it's not a ball rolling down a hill that's sort of taking out anything in the week, and sort of keep it controllable so it just doesn't throw the whole thing off of kilter.
And that's why I didn't know if it had to do with the scheduling process or not, but.
No, not the
Not the
scheduling. We're talking about more of like scheduled events, not the schedule during the day. So for example, PSAT, College Board gives you a date.
Yeah.
You get to pick a Wednesday or a Saturday, and it is the day that they pick. So, that's a half a day. Goes right through fifth period, so it's a half a day that we lose time. And yet, it's very important data that we use for our accountability system, and it's given to all 9th, 10th, and 11th graders. So, and as I said, we lost some things that we normally would have done in September due to mosquitoes that got pushed. So a lot got condensed, and I hear Jess on this, a lot got condensed into October, and we'll look at each one of those things. I have the list, and Mike and I have already talked about it, how we're going to try to spread it out for next year.
It could have been also, the PSATs was a little bit more, I'm going to use the word impactful, although I hate that word. The loss of homerooms might have made that a little bit bumpier this year, because we didn't sort of have the systems in place we've had other years. So that might have made it a little bit more bumpy in terms of
One year was on computer this year. So it's brand new. College Board, the 9th graders all experimented
computers.
and did it on computers. The rest were papers. So now Sarah and the crew were dealing with 2 different systems, getting those tests done.
Training teachers for different things, yeah. It's a huge undertaking, yeah.
It's a lot of students, about 450 students getting tested at the same time.
Yes.
Other questions? Other questions for Jess? Thank you, Jess. Laura, parent rep.
Thank you. So real quick, last month, we did have one request from a parent who's also an educator, not at AMSA, that if we can look at curriculum night and the scheduling of curriculum night with the surrounding communities, especially for families who are either educators elsewhere or who have kids in multiple systems. We tend to have our curriculum night on the same night as other schools locally do. So just a question if we can kind of look at the surrounding towns and their schedules when we do schedule our curriculum nights.
That actually affects teachers as well, because there's plenty of teachers who can't go to their own kids. So that's the flip side of that too. I know lots of teachers are like, I have to choose between my students and my family.
Yeah. So I know it's hard because there's a lot of schools around and everybody does curriculum night in the same, like 2 weeks it seems in September, but that was a request from
Real quick on
last
that,
month.
we don't keep data on that though. We won't know what teachers have, what kids.
No.
You know what I mean?
No, we won't, but if we know that Hudson has a curriculum night and Maynard and Clinton and Shrewsbury and Worcester or whatever,
Chances are, teachers here have kids in
Have
those
kids
places.
in
So
those
it's more of a guessing game, but not a data-driven game, right?
Right, well, at least
well, it helps everybody if we're not on the same night as other
but
people.
at least you could look to the core towns to say, or based on our
Right.
student
Yeah,
population,
it's
what
gonna
There's
town-
logic, it's just not- we don't
What
have
towns
to-
should we
It's
consult?
not firm,
Yeah.
but maybe.
It's impossible to get one that everybody.
Right, there's only so many days in a
And
year.
the other thing is that AMSA has 3 separate curriculum nights, so, I mean, it's, you know, when you're
Chances
shooting
are.
a scatter shot like that, you're
Yeah.
gonna hit some of them. And there's no way that we can put it all in one night because of parking.
Yeah. Okay. And then the other question that came up was about class size. And if we had a policy, I have since learned, talking to Mike, that we have a ceiling of 26 students per class, but we don't have a floor policy, is my understanding. Is that correct?
Not yet.
Not yet, okay. So the question is out there, there are some parents discussing, is there a maximum number we allow in a class? Yes, before we close it off. But is there a minimum number we require to actually run the class? So,
There are kind of unofficial ones, but I don't think we have a firm.
Pardon me?
There are unofficial ones.
Well, I heard that back many years ago, that it was determined, I in fact had a conversation with Scott just at the end of last week, that 14 was the number that was thrown out, there was some type of a financial, something that was run, and Scott was involved with it, and that I felt that was the break-even point. Numbers have changed significantly in the last 6 or 7 years, is how long ago he thought it was. So we could run that type of a thing again. That we had a conversation about this earlier, Roger and Mike and I and Raul, and there's a lot of considerations there that we need to talk about. But right now, there's no minimum.
No minimum.
Especially for our upper level math classes and AP classes.
And language classes.
Yeah. And for the language, actually, it's more the AP.
The AP is the top one, yeah.
Yeah. And although I think there's things that we can do in some of the electives and some of the other classes as far as minimums are concerned, I want to be really careful about that because we are not an advanced math and science academy if we do not have advanced level math classes and we don't have AP classes. So we want to protect and maintain those things, and then look maybe at some of the other classes if we see that there's issues there.
Okay.
I've actually just run all the numbers.
Also more in terms of a cap, I believe that the teacher's contract is worded that there's a good faith effort to stop at 23 and a hard cap at 26.
That's correct.
okay, great, thank you. That's it from the parent side.
Thank you. Next up, I will be doing a presentation on the open meeting law overview.
Accounting and open meeting on the same night?
No pressure, Roger, but we're about 15 minutes behind schedule, so putting that out there.
Most of the time.
Roger, I'm stuck on a little twirly.
Is that the technical, is it the IT term? Yeah, twirly.
Okay, help us out here.
Yeah, I got that.
You got it? Okay. Okay.
And twirling.
See, while we're doing that technical difficult, working through that, I'll borrow a little seat here. So, going on to chair business while we're fighting for technical difficulties. First, announcing a change in board membership. Gene Pettinelli has resigned from the board. He needs to spend more time with his family, and we'd like to thank him for his many years of service to the school, both on the board and as a teacher. He's provided many good insights, particularly in the financial matters. So he will be missed, and appreciate all of his efforts there.
And votes first.
And votes first, yes.
It's the Pettinelli innovation.
Yes, it takes many. So next up, I wanted to talk. I'm going to skip over B for the moment because I don't want to break that conversation. I think we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about the boot camp retrospective and next step. So just to seed your thoughts, we're going to think about, I thought we had a very successful boot camp, but a lot of people have told me that after the meeting they left very energized and thinking about next steps. So start thinking both from a retrospective and for board next steps that we can do. And next, a assignment or challenge for each of the committees. I would like each committee chair to have their committee create SMART goals for the current year. And I've also asked, Jill has taken over the Challenges Governance Committee, that Jill is going to work with the Governance Committee to create top-down goals for the, she's just going to do bottom-up goals for governance, but as well as working through the board top-down candidate goals for our year. And
yeah, Roger, and we had already discussed this and we have it on our agenda for November, but I think the one thing that occurred to us as we were thinking about them is the board sets their SMART goals in like January, and so we're almost like a year behind in setting ours. So yeah, so it's just something to think about that I don't know, we want to probably try to get more on the same schedule in terms of setting our goals from a committee and board perspective.
That's all in the next report.
Okay, there you go.
so that's the challenge. That's definitely a request for each of the committee chairs to lead. And finally, coming out of the development committee meeting we had this month, I'm going to create a community outreach development task force. So these are going to be 2 members of the board who are going to help coordinate with our community, particularly the parents, to help us meet our development goals. And Ben and Maura have volunteered to lead that effort. So I'm appointing them as our community outreach board member representatives, and the challenge to them, I think, is to be done mostly in development, and also that we're working with them individually to create their own goals and success criteria so that we really define what this community outreach development task force will be and what it will not be, and how it coordinates particularly with the development community, or with the development committee and the community at large. Does that make sense, Maura and Ben?
Yep.
All right, so we have a task force. So with that, we'll go to the open meeting law.
We skipped
Maybe already there.
All right, this is an introduction to a view of open meeting law, or OML. We've all, as board members, who've signed this form, but well, what does this really mean to us? Well, what is open meeting law? Well, it's not an order of merit list, it's not orange mutant llamas, or an open oil mining license. For us, it's the open meeting law.
The orange mutant llamas has some potential. We should work on that.
Think about that. So,
Roger, can you?
You can take it up.
all right. So what is the 2 things I'm going to talk about tonight? One is, what is the purpose?
It's working.
It's working, okay. What is the purpose of open meeting law, and what are the key aspects for us? Because each organization has their own parts of open meeting law that they care more about than others. So, right from the state, the purpose of open meeting law is to ensure transparency in deliberations on which our public policy is based. So that the requirement from the state is that we be transparent, and it's very much in line with the school goals of integrity and community and excellence. So yes. So the key aspects for us. Well, we're going to talk about three things here. What does open meeting law apply? How do we handle remote participation? And what about executive session? So when does open meeting law apply? That's always the big question. These are the criteria. Are we communicating? We're talking. I talked to Raul about baseball. Well, we're communicating, yes, but it doesn't meet the second criteria that it involves a matter, or the third criteria here, that involves a matter within the board's jurisdiction. So if we're talking about the school, then we're talking about something in the school. And there's also a question of, the other big question comes up about what is deliberation. That's always comes up as a question. What is deliberation? Well, the state has defined that for us. It's the expression of an opinion on matters within the body's jurisdiction to a quorum of the public's body. So if I'm talking about a fact, what is the budget number for this, or that's not an opinion, but if I'm formulating and saying, well, I think that you should change the school colors to be purple and green. I don't know, I know that's pretty horrible, isn't it? That's a matter of opinion. We're starting to talk so if you're expressing your opinion, and it's not just 5 people in the room, which is our current court number, it can count daisy chains. So if I talk to Raul talks to Kristen talks to Maura talks to Jess, you've hit 5 members. So the daisy chains count for this purpose. So you can't avoid it by, I'm only going to talk to one person.
So, and I think it's important then that if even if nobody else responds, so voicing, I thought deliberation was back and forth, but this says that you don't need the back and forth. If I state an opinion and nobody responds, that's still deliberation. Right?
Yes, that is still deliberation.
Because I know we were discussing, so when we met Saturday, we followed all the process for an open meeting, but we were wondering whether or not it was required for it to be an open meeting, because the purpose of it, even though it was tied to the school, it was more of a board training session. But I think we did the right thing by erring on the side of transparency, because through that, it would have been very hard not to express an opinion about the school.
Right.
Yes.
Even if we weren't making decisions or going back and forth.
Right. If we had strictly done something that was, well, even though like you said, even if we had strictly devoted the whole time to getting to know each other, that probably would still meet it. But the second half of our meeting was focused on development for the school. That's clearly an item within the jurisdiction of the board. So, and yeah, that's the other good point. Err on the side. If you're in doubt, post it as a meeting. If you have a question, contact myself or Jill, and we'll give you guidance on whether you can proceed with the actions that you are planning to do. So, through our bylaws, we've amended them a few years ago to allow remote participation. You are required to, by default, an organization, a public body in Massachusetts has to explicitly enable remote participation. We have it. There's some special rules. One, you have to have quorum among the physical people present at the meeting. So if we have a development committee meeting, I need 3 development committee members out of our total of 5 to be physically present at the meeting location in order to have a meeting. You also need to be able to hear each other, and you also have to do, all votes are required to be by roll call vote if you have anybody participating remotely that is a member of the committee. So if Ellen participates remotely to our board meeting, she is not a trustee of the board, no roll call vote is required. But if I'm participating remotely at a meeting, then we do have to do roll call votes. Executive session, we've had quite a few of them. The reasons that we've gone into executive session are litigation strategy, purchase or lease of real estate, negotiations with non-union or union personnel. There are a total of 10 reasons. We haven't exercised the other 4. So, in summary, OML covers all board and committee meetings and other interactions that you're having as board members. Remote participation is allowed. Executive session is allowed for explicit reasons. and contact the governance chair or the board chair if you have specific questions or concerns. So with that, open the floor for any questions. And the slides will be, there's additional slides if you would, additional resources, this will be attached in the minutes of this meeting.
Yeah, it's like 60 pages of the thing that you sent out today, right? Don't try to print it.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't hit print before you see it's 103 pages.
So with that, thank you all.
I think it should be in the documents then.
No, it was fine. I just hit print without realizing it was 102 pages. And so I hit cancel, but then it was like spooling, so I just kept printing and I hit cancel on my computer.
Come with a warning.
Yeah, exactly. And I looked up and
Then you ripped the cord out of the wall.
Exactly. I'm afraid to put paper back in my printer. It's going to continue to keep going for the rest of my life.
Yes, 7:20. Thank you. All right. So, now we put our thinking caps on. First, I'd like to spend a little bit of time just on a retrospective to say, what went well, what could have been better, how often should we do this? So I'll just open the floor up for comments on the meeting, on the boot camp.
I think it was excellent to have the meeting, especially with all of our new members. So it was a really good time to get to know everybody and have everybody get to know each other, unfortunately. So you'll have to have another meeting, do that one-on-one with everybody.
I feel sorry for everybody.
Or you need to tell us how many states you've been to.
That's right. We had lots of homework for you.
All right, no problem.
That's my comment.
Yeah, as a new board member, I thought it was the same thing because I think here we don't have the opportunity to talk through everything. And I think that was good from my point of view to hear more about individuals and just see how they react to different things and get to know everybody. So it was good from a new board member too.
Yeah, I think from a practical perspective, for me, it was very valuable to kind of develop and practice our elevator pitch or elevator speech about AMSA. I don't know if you ask me right now if I would have it down pat, but maybe it would be helpful. I don't know, and I left early, so maybe you guys got to this, is get maybe a short sentence that we all agree is kind of part of our, we can change it as we need to, but how do we standardize or maybe get a little homogeneous, how would you say, make our speech more homogeneous across all the board?
Yeah, and I think we talked about getting like the one pager of some of the numbers, so I think that will sort of drive, that can drive sort of that idea behind a more homogeneous speech that we can all use or pitch.
Yeah.
I would say it's not something that we would necessarily have to do every year, but I think that once we add like 2 or 3 or 4 members, however many we decide, I think it's useful to do, would be useful to do it again.
Well, I think we chose a topic, so I don't know if we have to do the same topic again, right?
Exactly.
I think I could probably think of a couple other ones that would be good to focus on. So I think there may be an opportunity to say, you have one get to know you one, but then we have other smaller focused ones to accomplish a different goal than the elevator pitch.
Yeah, so building on that, you can start thinking, we have the yearly board offsite meeting at the end of January timeframe, and I'm just started thinking about what do we want to accomplish at that meeting. We've got a number of possibilities. And I think the meeting on Saturday gave us a few more of them. So so start thinking about that, and I think that was something that will be either discussed at the board meeting or through governance as to the plan for the January offsite meeting. All right. Next steps. I was excited leaving the meeting, a little bit tired at that point, but I really left the meeting feeling excited about the opportunities and many different things that we could be doing, but what are other people's thoughts for next steps coming out of the meeting beyond, I already wrote fast facts down, but what things should we be doing, particularly from a development perspective or just in general, things that board members can be doing?
I'd say one thing is, if people have, around the development activities, if people have meetings where they have a conversation that they feel went particularly well, that maybe bringing that contact name forward to the development group might be a way to, you want to avoid multiple people calling the same person, but at the same time, you want to make sure that people are aware that there was an initial conversation. Whether or not it goes further is up to the development committee, but at least, bringing that forward, I think, would be an important step.
I think it's a great idea. I think that there is an opportunity because we all have ad hoc, not planned conversations that have a lot of value to them. So if there's a process of which just dropping an email or something like that, just a little bit of the meat of the conversation, I think that would be very helpful because I think we do have to get some sort of rhythm and database of concepts that we're doing so we don't target or we don't do something that's going to overwhelm one particular group or one particular person or something like that just because they show up everywhere. You know what I mean? Like you don't want to do that. So it also gives us an idea of what our outreach capabilities are. You know what I mean? Like where do people start seeing, I talk to these 5 people at sporting events. Okay, then we know we have a tentacle into sporting events, right? But we don't have anybody in another area, right? So we can start to take a look at where we're getting some of the good conversations in target areas like that. So
it's a great idea.
And I think we all practice that elevator pitch by accident or we do it on purpose or, you know what I mean? Like we should all try to do it on purpose sometimes, right? So we don't scare and not everybody's comfortable with it. I think it'd be good to start hearing as you mature it, what kind of feedback you get from what we learned and what we could do better, right?
I did see between, actually starting Saturday evening, I did see LinkedIn invitations.
I was doing it during the meeting.
For those who did homework, yes, exactly.
So.
Should do a couple more now.
Other thoughts?
The only one that I had was, you don't get that kind of conversation here, you know what I mean? Like we don't have the opportunity to talk here like this, so, even if it's not as formal, I think we could also have, it's formal, but it's not an 8-hour engagement, right? I still think there's potential pockets of other ideas that we could do to tackle smaller topics and have a better intimate or, kind of closer conversation. I think that was a good yield of, if you look at the overall time we spent there was times in which we were very productive and other times it kind of slowed down. We could capitalize on some of the productive parts and use some specific topics to do things.
You're saying that we could carve out a subtopic to discuss here at the board meeting?
Potentially, yeah. I think that's one opportunity to do it. Maybe somewhere more fun, but yeah, we could do something that's...
I think too, we could also look at the skills we have of the people at the table. I don't think we necessarily always have to have somebody outside to do the activity. I think we've got a pretty diverse group here, and in our professional lives, we probably all do something that could bring value to the board. And so it might be a smaller, like you said, smaller chunk of time, not 8 hours, that so we all remember and are still refreshed at the end. But that could possibly really help with the growth of the organization as a whole.
Yeah, that thought occurred to me too, more like, is that, I don't know, I'm sure that man who I learned his name was Chuck. That I'm sure he's being paid for his services and in a situation where we have fixed resources. Is that something, was he bringing something so magical that we couldn't reproduce that ourselves? I don't know, but...
At the time that we first met Chuck, we did feel that he was bringing something special, and I think what he brought to the meeting was a very clear knowledge of working with boards and motivating boards and developing boards, in charter school boards in particular.
Yeah,
so I think
he clearly knew what he was talking about, yeah.
Well, and I think the other thing is if we try to do it ourselves, someone inevitably is going to get sort of stuck in that role and they won't be able to participate as fully or be as present because they're they're trying to do that role. That's always a challenge.
Pauline's done it. Remember that? Yeah, Pauline did it.
Yeah.
One of the January ones.
Yes.
Yeah, and Pauline's comment to me afterwards was exactly that
Yeah.
because she was being the facilitator, that she could not participate as a member of the board. So,
But I think Maura was talking like maybe
but yeah,
subtopics.
if we went for a subtopic or just either met as a board to go after one thing or just at the board meeting, I think we could manage it ourselves for tackling one specific item.
I think you needed one big one to get us started.
Yeah.
And then you can, now that we've gotten over that initial stuff, we can start to leverage that. And if we do it quarterly or some sort of rhythm, then we're not just like, oh, let's think of an idea 6 months from now and throw something together. You know what I mean? Like, back to that calendar idea, the more we can expect things that are coming up, the more we can all mentally prepare or delegate the work out and things like that to make it a success.
Great.
I think we need to be respectful of people's time. Quarterly seems excessive to
Oh,
me. Some people have like families.
I know. But if it's a 2 hours versus 6 hours and it's not on a Saturday, you know what I mean? Or it's an extension to this meeting for half an hour or something, that we have a focused topic or something. But
Yeah.
Little PB.
Right. Very good. Any last feedback on the feedback or ideas on the development boot camp and retrospective? If you have additional ideas, forward them to myself and the development committee, so we can continue to expect to leverage the development committee to brainstorm on the ideas. We're probably planning to do. I don't know. Did you want to talk about the ideas for brainstorming? As far as putting ideas on the wall? And
yeah, I mean, there's a methodology or a method to the madness, I used to call it for my teams, where there's a brainstorming concept where everyone basically on sticky notes writes down all their ideas and sticks them on the wall. And then we all look at them, we group them together, we prioritize them, we pull them together, and we look at what makes most sense, and then we can plan them out better, right? So instead of just everyone just having an open conversation, throwing ideas out there, it's just some method to the madness to actually come to kind of a thought process and a logic to where we prioritize and look at things. So it can be used for a lot of different decision makings. It's just for a development committee, everyone has an idea. Do I do a golf tournament? Do I do a bake sale? You know what I mean? Like, everyone thinks about different ways to do it, but when you actually look at them and you group them together, you actually can start to see the similarities, and with those similarities you can actually plan out and get a core type of activities and then just apply them to different, you know, kind of use models. So yeah, we'll take a look at that and figure out if that's a good idea. Because I mean, everyone has ideas, right? But it's execution strategy against those and weighing them against people's time and effort and things like that, what's going to be effective.
Yep. Very good. So that ends chair business. Committee reports, starting with governance.
Okay, so first thing we did was assign mentors to our new board members. So I hope everyone knows who their mentor is, but if for some reason I forgot to send you the contact information or anything like that, Raul has been assigned to Ben, Liz has been assigned to Cindy, Kristen has been assigned to Nick, and I have been assigned to both Maura and Sheila. So with that, the first assignment is just to first reach out to the mentee, the new board member, and from there, you're the point of contact. So if there's an initial question that comes up from a new board member, contact your mentor first, and if he or she is not aware of the answer or thinks someone else has a better answer, they'll refer you to the better source. But hopefully that at least will get communication going. I mean, feel free to take your mentee out for wine or something. If we don't go too late.
Expense that? Wait, does the finance committee expense that?
We'll work on it. So that was our first item. And then with regard to SMART goals, like Roger mentioned, he wants each committee to create their own SMART goals. So governance is going to draft for the November meeting a first stab at the entire board SMART goals, and then within that we're going to assign
Which is
Yeah, there's a December one.
Early December.
I meant our November.
Our next meeting.
Committee.
Governance.
Oh, right.
For- yeah.
For the November Governance Committee meeting and.
Yeah, this is what we're going to be doing in November governance, so that you will have it for December. But what our ask is if you have a committee meeting in November, think about creating your own SMART goals, because the governance committee will set out the entire board goals, but then we're going to assign sub-goals, so that if, the finance committee's goal is to have a $200,000 surplus this year. That could be the entire board goal, but we're going to assign it to the finance committee. Development's going to have their goal. We're going to ask the facilities task force to develop a goal. It will be the whole board's goal, but it's really the facilities task force to kind of define what our facilities goal will be. And then my plan is to color code the committees so that you see the whole board goal, and then, quickly, finance has a green highlighted goal. And then by December, with your committee SMART goals and our entire whole board goals, I like to merge it all together into one document. We'll see how that goes. It's gonna be pretty.
I'm in favor of anything color-coded.
So that's sort of the assignment. If you have a November committee meeting, put on your agenda to discuss your committee's SMART goals and draft. It's just a draft at this point.
We must have been like psychic or something. I should play the lottery, because we've already have it as our November. We didn't get to it in October, so we already have it on our November. So it's just kind of funny that you're bringing this up.
Should we, for reference, because I keep thinking about the long-term goals and how do they impact our annual goals? I'm kind of leading the witness, but should we look at those as we consider how we create the annual goals?
I mean, that could be a guidepost, something to refer to.
So you just use them for inspiration, I guess. Because the long-term goals are long, but you need to take small steps every year to get closer to those goals, so.
Well, and I think once you get the whole board goals, you will be more focused on what your committee needs to do too, hopefully. In addition to your own.
Right, but I wasn't thinking about whole board versus committee. I was thinking about long-term versus short-term.
Right, okay.
Right, so that, anyway, just making a point that considering long-term goals in defining the short-term goals is a good idea.
I agree. Thank you. And then another administrative task for governance is to update the topic calendar. It used to be the ideal calendar. And then I think ideally the committees should have their own topic calendar too. But I think it might be similar to the SMART goals. It might be easier for the committees to develop their topic calendars once the draft is finalized of the entire board's topic calendar. So that's just on the radar screen. And then we are going to start requiring, per Sarah's request, that all committees submit their meeting minutes in Board on Track. And I don't want to steal your thunder, but I believe we are going to be having a training on Board on Track coming up. But if you can try to figure out between now and then how to put your committee meeting minutes up there, we really need to do that from a reporting and
Department of Education periodically will ask us for them, as they did recently for the charter renewal. So it's really helpful to Sarah if they're there.
And it also gives, it helps us in the visibility of our work, so that we have one true place to say where are our minutes. We've in the past, they've been in Roger's shoebox and underneath somebody's door, and Sarah goes on this scavenger hunt once a year to find all the minutes, and we want to get Sarah out of that business, as well as increasing our visibility for all of the board members so we can see what what is being done. And yes, there will be at the December board meeting, Board on Track will be coming here and giving a presentation. I think of 20 to 30 minutes.
I think that'll be great. So, and that's all we had in governance.
Any questions for Jill? Thank you, Jill. Finance.
Finance is basically done. We took our vote on our investment policy, which we discussed at our last meeting, and we also reviewed the audit in advance of this meeting. Because of all the work getting ready for the audit, we're going to have a 2-month financial statement review next month. So that's what we have.
Questions for Kristen? Thank you. Education, Liz.
So our last meeting, we, as Ellen had mentioned, we reviewed the MCAS scores. We provided feedback to Ellen for her presentation tonight. We also have had a call with the Psych Charter School to look at sort of what our calendar of events should be for the year, just based on some best practices. So that's something that we are currently working on for the Education Committee. And we had already talked about the whole idea of SMART goals, so it's on our agenda for this coming month. And I think that's it. Yeah, that's it.
All right, questions for Liz? Development Committee. So we spent a lot of time in the board offsite meeting, already discussing a lot of development topics that came up at Development Committee, but two things that did come up is that one of our goals is that we're going to work with the administration to come up with a development calendar of events so that we know all the development activities are going on in the school. And that's not just ones that is being led by the board. The PTO has their list, and there's some that are being run by the administration, and where does the annual giving campaign fall? And so having a vision, a document to say, oh, here are all the development related activities all collected in one place so we don't overschedule ourselves or put everything in the same spot. So that's one of the goals that we had coming out.
Roger, you used the word development. Can I assume that you mean fundraising?
It's not always fundraising.
Yeah.
Fundraising is a subset of development.
Okay, that's why I'm kind of asking for a clarification, because it would be bad if people are asking money at this, like the PTO is doing.
That was the whole point, was like, if we don't collaborate and coordinate all activities, especially fundraising ones, because those are the ones that hit people like, oh, they just asked me this side, this side. Why are those groups differently? Who am I giving money to? What's it all for, right? So that was one of the side projects of this calendar, was to point out, but it was also to open up the collaboration with the PTO and look at ways that we have synergies together, right? Okay. And ways that we can capitalize on events to be able to say, hey, we can sponsor, you can sponsor, we can figure out how to not make it feel like every day someone's asking me for money, right? But development, I think, to your point too, is more than just fundraising, right? So it's how do we make things better? How do we improving things around here? So sometimes it does require funding to do that, but just look at other ways to do it.
So I think
we want to remember that the PTO is a very separate organization, separate from the school, and we want to make sure they have their autonomy. But there's, for example, a golf tournament, that's a big event that they are actually working on, but they're doing that in conjunction with the development committee for June 22nd, actually.
Next year, yeah.
But I think we have to be careful because they fund the scholarships, and we're not going to invade in their fundraising.
No, and that would be
things like that.
Right.
Thanks.
in particular, what we're looking for from development, it's not, especially when we're reaching out to corporations, to foundations, that we want to look for student internship possibilities, scholarships, opportunities for that company to donate us an electron microscope. There are many. It's much more than just.
Maybe not so much on that. We already have one.
Well, how about a second server? But yeah, so it's not just an ask for money now. We want to be able to establish a relationship with with various organizations within the community so that we can continue to build bridges and then seek to leverage relationships going forward. It's not a one-time money ask.
Yeah, good, thank you. Yeah, that's good, you should work together.
So,
That's your second point.
well, so the two things coming out of development committees, one of our goals is to create a development calendar of events, and the second is to work towards SMART goals. And from what Ben was saying, that we also want to run a brainstorming session to identify the targets for development opportunities. We have many opportunities, and we have only so many hours in the day. We want to be smart about what we go after.
We're also kicking off the annual campaign much earlier this year. So Roger and I will be getting a letter out, hopefully targeting November 1st, which is quickly approaching. I'm going to look at that this weekend. Mark's got a bunch of ideas up his sleeve.
I know.
Yeah.
Got my candy.
More, Ben, anything else to add to that?
Now, we already touched on the Community Outreach Development Task Force, so just to reiterate that, that's another opportunity for the Development Committee to extend its reach to get things done, right? So the Development Committee can come up with a lot of ideas, but our capacity to actually deliver on all those ideas is kind of challenged when you think about the breadth of what you could do from a development point of view. So the idea of the Community Outreach was to take 2 of our members and put them on with the community to be able to say, how do we extend our reach, right? And I think it's a good idea for us to own the development ideas, but to execution, we can actually reach out and ask for help. So that's what that community outreach program was, is to find the talents either within our school, within our group, within our networks, or even as we develop relationships with corporations, and how to look at using them as our ambassadors to get access to more things that we just don't have the time and effort to do.
Very good. Questions for development? Meeting?
Quick question.
Sure.
Was there any discussion of that idea where there's actually a parent development task force?
Well,
we call it a community one, so we didn't call it a parent one, because what we believe is it doesn't need to be a parent on this to do the execution about it, but primarily it'd be made up of interested parents, right?
Because there is a group of like 6 parents that Mark is aware of.
Yeah, oh, he is. And that's what kind of sparked the idea. But then if we limit it to a parent only, we felt like we limited it to say if a corporation wanted to actually bring somebody in and help us do something to develop something, like we don't want to say, well, you're not a parent, so you can't be on this committee. So we call it a community one, but it's made up by 6 parent, we're not going to say we're going to select anybody, so it's open to anybody.
So you're talking about the same, this is the
Yeah, this is the same exact thing, we just named it different, yeah.
Got it. Changed the name.
And Mark's already sent me some calendar events and things like that, so he's already thinking brain-wise, like how we can even offset some of the work he does and formalize it more, and then make it repeatable, right? So it's not like every corporation goes into, he has to come up with a new generic, or a new custom speech. He can reuse a lot of things that he's doing. So it's good for him as well.
Yeah. Very good.
Thank you.
Next, other questions for development? Meeting effectiveness. So sort of the standard, we're trying to see how we can improve the meeting, comments, good and bad, as far as how the meeting went.
We're 11 months ahead.
We got back on schedule.
Got back on schedule.
That's good.
Why don't we just, everyone give a comment or pass, starting with Ellen, just work our way around the room.
I thought it worked well. We're ahead, it's good.
Does anyone have an opinion of Chuck's idea of having a board meeting every other month?
Jessica does.
Yes.
Isn't there a DESE?
It just never occurred. We have we have to have 10 per year.
It was 9.
9. Oh,
It was
9 per
Sheila
year?
looked it up.
Okay, 9 per year. So
But
we
we
have
could
to change
change
our
the
bylaws. But
Yeah, his whole comment, we just had a sort of ad hoc discussion at the end, but he said there's nothing that requires you to have a monthly meeting. I mean, we're the ones who set that, so if we want to change it to say that it's going to be every other month, and maybe the off months is when you have your committee meetings, that sort of thing. So it's just that was all the discussion was about.
I think there's something to be said for really focusing our work and being effective and intentional about it, potentially. So I think there's a discussion to be had. I don't think it's a matter of like, oh, good, we'll have like much more free time, because I don't think that's necessarily it, but I think it's more the effectiveness of when we come together and the effectiveness of how we are in our committees, instead of it being like, okay, another meeting, and we're just kind of rushing through and trying to cram everything in. It might be, we might have more impact in what we do if we are a little bit more intentional about it. So I think there's
But just to
value
be clear on
in
what I asked, so the 9 meeting minimum is a bylaws thing, it's not a DESE.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah,
it's-
so
it's-
we can
it's-
change that.
It's our bylaws.
Yeah.
The one risk factor I can think of by doing that is if something needed to be voted on and a decision needed to be made, and to wait 2 months on something. So I believe we should have some sort of mechanism, right, that says if we do go that route, that there is a way to actually get something voted on and approved by not having to wait for 2 months.
And we do.
We can
I mean,
always call a meeting.
We can have an emergency meeting, and we've done that in the past when it's like typically during, when there's been significant issues going on with the real estate, or when there's been, when we're doing the teacher contracts. Typically, we will have emergency meetings if something has to get, and basically all we need is 48 hours to post the meeting, correct, Sarah? Yeah, so.
May I get, sorry, after hearing talk about that, and I was thinking about the bylaws and how often you meet, and then I looked into board on track and I asked that question, and they disagree. And I just thought this would be interesting because they have a different opinion. However, although they think that trying to do every other month, it actually said in board on track, their advice was every other month. They didn't feel it was enough for governance to govern the school. However, they said specifically to manage and be more efficient in the meeting time, that the meeting shouldn't be long. They could be every month or 10 times a year. I think they even said that. But it was about really being efficient. And what Chuck said is that information should be shared, not at the meetings. People should have seen it ahead. Come in, you make your votes, you do your things, you do your business. But the frequency was important, just not the time, the length. And I think that's where you run into these things, is that your meetings probably run longer than you need to. But once a month probably isn't, or the 10 times, the 9, it's 9 plus your strategic, right? Is that what it is?
Yeah, I mean, for example, I could film my report with Mike Finkel a week ahead, send it out to you, and you wouldn't have to sit here and listen to me for 20 minutes.
Something like
That's our favorite part.
But I like that part.
The razzle-dazzle, I know.
I was actually gonna say, if we don't have monthly meetings, I wouldn't want to miss your monthly update, so that's the one thing. No, and it's not just you, that's when we hear about what's going on in the school.
Right, I think it connects us with the school.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I'm glad you find that from those reports, that's good.
I feel like often, and this could be just me because I don't come from a corporate world, but I feel like there's often a lot of time that we're talking about talking, like how are we going to talk about things, and then how did we talk about the things, and then, so like that meta stuff I find frustrating, like can't we just talk about the things? So I feel like there's a lot of condensing that could happen, and I agree that keeping things focused, that could help that.
May I ask just about the minutes? So the minutes go out, and probably time could be saved if those corrections were sent to me earlier, right? And then what you're doing is, then it would go out again corrected, or something. Is that possible? Can you do that?
Yeah.
Comments come in that way, and then it goes out, then it's voted.
The only thing is, are the comments subject?
They could go to Sarah because she is not a board member, but
It's not individual and not.
But,
Is it deliberating?
you're getting close to deliberation.
Yeah, it would probably.
Even if it's factual?
Well, if it's,
I'm talking about factual.
Like tonight.
Right,
How
right.
did Raul?
Right, Raul was absent.
Yeah.
He couldn't have been there. If as long as it's correctional, factual related content, we could iterate on that, but we're not deliberating. But if you're saying my opinion was missed on the discussion of attrition.
I'm talking about these
Right.
corrections.
Right, if it's factual grammatical corrections, we can iterate on that in email, because that's not, just like we can discuss what to put on an agenda is something that we do via email, and it's not an opinion. So so yes, we can continue. In fact, we can work to try to put the minutes public. We could consider putting we have like a two-step dance we do now where Sarah will write the meeting minutes and put it out as draft and only have a couple people on it. How about
I thought you
just?
sent them to me first.
I do.
Yeah, I approve them first.
Right. Do we just want to? I mean, sometimes that causes the delay in how long the minutes are
I
in
can talk
draft.
to you right away.
Yeah, you do.
Okay. Let's just leave it then. Continue that process. Sheila, any thoughts on the meeting?
No, not that, above what we already said.
Laura?
I think following on what Jill said, being effective and continuing to really hone in on our process, I think will help.
Same. Okay.
Yeah, I think, one of the things that resonated for me from what Chuck said was getting the reports out ahead of time. If people have reports that they're seeking feedback on in the meeting, we can get them out. If we can get them out to board members before the meeting so you can have a chance to read them ahead of time rather than spending meeting time working through the reports. I think that's something we can endeavor to do better on. Agenda items for December 5th. So one of them is the board
I don't recall exactly the timeline for the pulse survey. I know we're going to close it by the Thanksgiving break, but would we have enough to talk about them in December?
I don't think so, because Thanksgiving is late if you remember, or if you listen to the retail sector, so. Yeah, so they've cut down a week of shopping. But, so I doubt it. I doubt we'll have any feedback.
January.
Okay, so January pulse survey. Board on Track training is for December. Jill, what's on our calendar for December?
Well, wrong one. Sorry. Yeah, I saw it. So ED goals, check-in.
That should be January.
Okay. And then PSAT results?
That's January also. We
Okay.
don't get the results back until just before the holidays.
Okay. ED goals and
Pulse survey
PSAT.
got moved.
And
Pulse survey.
for
January, isn't that
the
January?
pulse survey and the ED goal check-in and the PSAT are all January items. We do have the review of the board goals would be done in December.
Right.
So the two.
And possibly, and then the topic calendar too.
And, the topic calendar fits right with that. So we have three December special topics. One is the Board on Track training. The second is the board goals and the topic calendar, which, whether you count that as 2 or 3 items, either way. Anything else to add?
Does the January offsite need to be discussed in December? Who puts that on? Is that another coordinated by development committee?
It's typically coordinated through governance. We probably should, we should definitely talk about it in the December meeting. Board offsite. So.
I'll send out a save the date reminder. I took a note.
Okay.
That's great.
Cool.
Thank you.
I'll make sure I check my calendar before committing.
All right.
It's the 25th. We'll have to decide where we want to have it.
Yeah. You'll have to figure out where to. where to host that. So if people have ideas for the location for our board offsite, please send them to Jill and myself. Okay, summary of action items. What action items did we have from this meeting? I don't think we grew, other than committee assignments.
Oh, well, and the SMART goals. So
All right, we have SMART goals per committee, and governance has work to do. And are there any open action items from last meeting that we did not get to? Let's see. SMART goals for board at governance in progress. We got the mentor-mentee is done.
Photos and bios.
New members need photos and bios.
Still need to do it.
Almost.
Laura's on top of it.
Yours is great.
Laura's got hers up there.
And that's what we do it.
And
I'm in a timeout.
Oh, Sheila, are you up?
I think so,
Yes,
I
it
sent it in, so.
Oh, okay.
Great.
I'll take a look.
I'll revise the last item. So for the people that were on the vision task force, it asks that you send your vision document, the latest version you had, to Jill as governance, so that we can collect the state of the vision task force, so we can reopen that.
By when?
Within the week.
Okay. I collected what we have.
Yeah, if you can
Okay,
also,
okay.
don't want to lose all that hard work in progress. So, with that, I think we are ready to enter executive session. Is there anything that I missed or other business? I'd like to take a motion to enter into executive session, where we will not, as described before, we will not re-enter open session. We're going to discuss purchase and lease of facilities, legal strategy, and strategy for negotiating with represented personnel, being the teachers union.
So moved.
Second.
Raul and Liz, roll call vote. And I also will be inviting Liana, Mike, and Ellen to the executive session.
Aye.
Aye.
No, she can't come.
Aye.
Aye. All in favor? We'll start at 10 minutes to 9.